All right, so I'm going to start with explaining the file that you have for this assignment in Lab 3, drag and drop. You have 3 div tags in your code, and the one called ID drop zone is a square rectangle, looks like it anyway. It has a width and height set up here, 120 pixels. And we also have a round div tag, which has border radius of 50%. That makes it look round. And then we have a third div with a blue fill. And this one is draggable. These are not. And that's because we have the attribute draggable equals true set to the third div tag. Now, if I were to cut that one out from here and instead paste it on the round div tag, that one would be draggable. So the draggable attribute makes it possible to drag an element around. Okay, so that's what the draggable attribute does. And then there's other events here. On drag start, that's fired when we start dragging this thing here. So right now it says here to do a function, which is not declared yet. And that's what you have to do. So something could start happening when we drag it. All right. So that's the thing that we have on our dragged item. Over here, we have 2 div tags, and I've called the one for drop zone and the other one I called no drop. So you're to figure out how to make this one be able to fit in here and stay inside of that one, but not in here. The 2 different drop zones have other event attributes on drop, on both of them, and on drag over. There are other events as well. As you can see here on a draggable item, you have on drag start, on drag, that is while dragging it, and on drag end when we release it, and when we stop dragging it. And the drop target they have on drag enter. So when we start hovering over this item with a dragged element, on drag enter fires. And we have on drag over, which is firing every time, all the time that we're over this item. And we have on drag leave. So whenever we drag our draggable item out of this element. And then we have on drop, something that should happen when we release a dragged item on top of this element. So the default behavior when we drag an item and we drop it is that it falls back. That's the default behavior. Do nothing and don't listen for anything else, just go back. You're not supposed to be dropped here. You're supposed to be down here. So that's why on drag over, we need to say that, well, just don't do what you normally do. That would be just reject this one. So otherwise, if we don't prevent the default behavior on drag over, it will never do this event. It will never listen for on drop, because then it would be already gone back. So let's add a script that defines whatever happens in this function here. So I'll add my script below here. All right, so script, and let's write this function. Function allow drop. It needs to be spelled exactly the same way, of course, otherwise it will not find this function. And as you can see here, I pass along something, and I say it's the event. But it will pass an event, the actual event of drag over. The drag over event will be sent to this function. So I'm just going to have a name for it here so that I can use it in my function, because it will pass an object that I can listen to and gather information from. So the first thing that we want to do is say that the event that was happening prevent the default behavior. So that's just something that you need to learn, that prevent default means stop doing your normal thing. That would be reject this when I drop it. As you can see right now, there's a plus sign instead, now that I have prevent default. But I don't have a script for it to make it stay in here, of course. But you will have the right icon, so you see that it will not prevent the default behavior of rejecting this one. This fires actually all the time. We can try this. We'll create a variable outside here, so we can use it inside of our function. And let's go into the event again and see what was the target that called this function. The target of the events. Well, if I drag it over here, then this will be the target. This div tag will be the target if this is the div tag that called the function. So inside event, we can find the target who made the call. So this would be the same thing as saying document.getElementById drop zone. All right, so now that we have this one, we have a reference to this div tag. We can say that we want its inner HTML, that is everything inside of here. So any tag that has a start and an end tag has an inner HTML. The inner HTML should be I, 0, right? If I drag it over here, that one gets 0. Because when I drag it over here, this element calls the function allow drop and it gets the inner HTML. But what if I just say that, well, I equals I plus 1. To see what happens. Well, as you can see, the on drag over event fires all the time that I have my mouse pointer with my draggable item over it. And it stops when I drag out. While I'm drag over, it will run this function allow drop. If I have over here, see, I incremented the variable I here, so it will continue like this. So this fires all the time that we have our draggable item over it. But that was just for demonstrational purposes. So what we're going to do in this lab is make this element fit inside here, but not inside of here. So how do we do that? How do we add this element inside of that one? Well, there is a built-in function to the document, to the DOM element, DOM class, that says that we can append a child. So what does that mean? Well, if this is the parent element, it has a starting tag and a closing tag. So in between here, we could have children. So if I do like this, I could just take this div tag here and I could drag it in my code and make it a child. So right now this is a child to this parent tag. It's inside of that one. So I want to do this with JavaScript. I want to append this child to this parent. I want to add the child to its parent. Let's drag it back here because we don't have access to the HTML code when people are doing this exercise. So we want to have a function for, what do we want to have a function for? Well, we'll have to figure that out. We have a draggable item. Right now we know which one it is because we only have one. It's the one that has the ID of drag me. But let's say we don't know that. Maybe we have several draggable items. Like if I copy this one and have a drag me to as well. Now that would be problematic. I would have two of them, right? They have the exact same, well, I wonder where that one is. Copy this line as well. Drag me to. Now it's down here. That one's over here. So if I drag this one, that would be that specific one. Let's give this a different color. All right. If I drag the blue one, that one should fit in here. If I drag the red one, that one should stay in here and be a child of this parent element. So how do we know which element we are dragging? Well, there is an object, again, an object for the draggable event that we can use to figure out what element is being dragged. And that is the data transfer object. The data transfer object is kind of like the clipboard. So like a global variable that we can access only between different draggable events, right? So when we start dragging, we want to, this is the only time actually that we can get that information, because this is the only function that will, well, this is the only function where this event is about this element. When we drop it, the drop event is on the parent. So we want to get the information from whatever element are we dragging right now. So let's create this function. Drag with the event passed on here so that we can have a look in the events. And inside this drag event, as I said, we have the data transfer object, and it has a couple of methods, and we're going to use set and get. So sorry, set data. This method takes two arguments. First, what type is this data in? And it's just plain text. We are going to pass the ID, this one, so that we can use that later on. So the event.dataTransfer, set data, that means put something inside of data transfer. And what we want to put in here is the target, the draggable target's ID, so that we can use that together with document.getElementById later on. So the events, it has a target, the draggable item, and that one has, of course, an ID, just like the inner HTML of this event target that we tried before. The ID attributes here. So the ID attributes of the draggable item will go into data transfer and be saved there until I drop it, and then just disappear. And that's actually the only thing that we need this function for, to know which element is being dragged. All right, so now we need a drop function, something that will happen on the parent tag here. And we want to append a child to this one. So we need to have the drop function that happens on drop. So function drop, and again we pass the event so that we can know which of these two elements we are dropping on, because that's inside the event.target. So first of all, we need to figure out, is it the right element we're actually dropping on? So we need to make a conditional statement. We need to figure out, is this the right one? So I'll start with an if. If what? If the target that we're dropping on is this one, the one that is called no drop, then we should not allow it to stay in here. We should not append this child to this element. So just say if event.target.id double equal sign, we're not going to assign it, we're going to check it, right? So if event.target.id, in this case the event target is whatever we drop on, if that ID equals no drop, is it a capital D? Yeah, drop. Then we'll maybe just type something inside of that one. So event.target.inner HTML, we say we don't fit. All right. But else, if it is not the no drop, I could actually be more specific here. I could say else if the event.target.id equals, and one's called drop zone, because that's the right one. I could have even more of these triangles and whatever. If the event.target.id equals drop zone, all right, then we want to append this dragged item into this one. But right now, the target of this event does not know who is being dragged, because the target who fires this one is, of course, the drop zone, this one. So how do we know if we have the blue or the red one right now? Well, it's inside of the data transfer object. That's where we saved it. So inside the event, oh, sorry. Let me just think here. Let's just put that ID, that text string that we got, that should continue drop zone or no drop. In this case, it will only be no drop. Otherwise, it will not come in here in this else if statement. So let's create a variable. Dragged item equals event.target, no, sorry, event.data transfer. And now we're not going to set data, we're going to get data in the form of plain text. We don't have to specify anything because we can't put anything. We're just going to get whatever is in there, right? And now whatever we saved here when we started dragging, we set this inside of data transfer, it will now be inside here. So this should say drag me or drag me to. Now, with the event targets, the drop zone, we want to call a method called append child. And what child node do we want to put in here? Well, it's the drag item. But this is only a text string, so we need to add a reference to whatever is being dragged right now. So with document get element by ID, not inside of quotes because I have it quoted in here. I want to add I'll just copy that one. The drag item ID is going to be in here. So this element that we get from document get element by ID, oops, is going to be appended as a child to the target that called this function. And that should be this one, the drop zone. Because if it was the no drop, it would end here, right? I misspelled get data with a capital D, of course, camel case. All right, so if I drag the blue square, it should stay. And if I drag the red one, that one should all, well, let's do this again. All right. Why didn't it work when I did like this, when I put another one in here? Because the drop zone is now filled with the previous draggable ID drag me. So if this one is now taking all the space inside of drop zone, right? So when we drop over this one, it will just not allow it because it doesn't have the on drag over allow drop, for instance. And it won't fit any of our if else statement either. So that's why. But as you can see here, if I drag the blue one, that one stays there. If I drag the red one stays there. But you have a strange effect here. When I drop it, it kind of stays, but it still flies back. But that's the default behavior of the browser. So if we do fit in here, we want the event to prevent default behavior. That is, look like it's being dragged back. Like that. All right, so that's pretty much it. And that one should say we don't fit, I think. That one didn't work either. I misspelled inner. We don't fit. It doesn't fit either, but that one fits. All right. So that's basically how drag and drop in this example works. And of course, you can do more creative stuff with this. And well, good luck with that.